The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. The Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Berdinsky. This is the episode for April 27. Ralph Tomaselli has the night off. He will be back next week. In the studio, two special guests, the superintendent of Wallingford School System, Dr. Sal Menzo, and the chairlady of the Wallingford Board of Education, Roxanne McKay, both veterans of the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks, guys, for coming on.
Thanks for
coming back. Yeah, we got a supple show planned, some meaty topics, and I want to get right to it. We're in budget season right now. I mean, you guys are going through budget workshops. The council is doing whatever they do. My informed speculation is that the mayor's budget will be adopted as is in its present form. If there's any changes, it'll be very minor and around the margin. That's my speculation. But the Board of Ed is not quite 2/3 of the budget, or sort of in that range. So, and it has more moving parts than the town government does. You got more employees, more properties, more everything. So it is significant. We wanted to cover it, but I wanted to just confirm a couple of things with you. The mayor has put in his budget a dollar amount for the Board of Ed, $100,517,369. Yet the context is, at the state level, legislatures are debating whether aid to cities and towns are going to go up and down, educational cost sharing go up and down, whether towns should be forced to contribute to the teacher's pension fund. In view of what the mayor has designated for the Board of Ed, are you assured, regardless of what happens in Hartford, are you assured that you're going to get $100,517,369?
As again, assuming that the town council approves the mayor's budget, yes.
Sure, okay. So following that to its logical conclusion, if the state decreases the aid to schools from the level that the mayor put in the budget, the town has to eat that difference up. You don't get less money.
That's our understanding.
And if the state should relent and add money to the governor's budget over and above what the mayor anticipated, you don't get it.
That's our understanding.
That's-
Okay. So we've solved the budget problem for 2017.
Well,
These are challenging times, and this isn't going to be the only year when we have the same problem. So are you guys girding yourself for similar problems in 2018?
Yeah.
19?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
we started those conversations already, really.
Just give me a little flavor of how you're girding, you're bracing yourself for
Well,
that.
we've embraced over the last 2 years lean philosophy in the school district. So we've done lean training for our administrators, and we had our first Kaizen event about a month and a half ago.
Your first
Kaizen event. A Kaizen event is a lean event where you dig deep into lean practices, wastes, and you look at the 7 different forms of waste, and you determine whether or not there's efficiencies and effectiveness that you can increase.
It's really a business philosophy,
Yeah,
more
we're,
than education.
We're
Sure.
adopting that to education, and so we're going to be changing our purchase order process in district to go fully electronic with electronic signatures, which will save time, paper, staffing. And then what we're doing in June, we're going to be doing a Kaizen event at each level. Last year we did the events and we had 3 layers: short-term, mid-term, long-term efficiencies. Those all went into play in this year's budget, so we were able to save close to $300,000 through that process for next year in the budget that we developed. So in addition, though, we do have to look at, and we're going to make a commitment because of the enrollment shifts. We do want to have
Enrollment's dipping a little bit, and then
it's,
leveling
you know,
off.
it's kind of interesting because
Yep.
it depends on the level. Elementary school is really significantly sustaining itself. We have a little dip at the high school at this point. Middle school is actually the highest it's been in many years. So it's presenting some opportunities. So we want to entertain several conversations over the summer with a variety of groups about where do we see, for example, our high schools. That's always a conversation.
Okay,
What high
I
school
think
schools.
yeah. Are you running a surplus this year?
Yeah, very small surplus because.
How much you running?
We're just over $300,000,
Yeah.
around $300,000.
So you get the benefit of my editorial comment about surpluses in the Board of Ed, because we hear a lot about surpluses. But your budget, again, almost twice the town budget. So a surplus for you is not the same as a surplus for the town,
No.
because your budget is so much bigger. So on a percentage basis, if you end up with $300,000, that's a minuscule sliver compared to what the town did. And this is, again, for the benefit of everyone who may be listening. Additionally, the town can afford to run a deficit. They just go into the general fund balance, cover
have
the
that
deficit, no problems. You, on the other hand, I think you go to jail, you're hung or tarred and feathered or something drastic like that.
Definitely leave town.
Yeah, I mean, it's a much bigger deal.
It
It
absolutely.
is a much bigger
Yeah,
deal.
just explain that just for a quick second.
Well, the challenge is that we would have to go back to the town for a special appropriation. And that is not what any superintendent or board of education would ever want to do. That is my personal responsibility, the board's responsibility that they have put in me to make sure that we are able to end
Yeah.
the year with some funds.
So $300,000 sounds to me like you're cutting it a little close there. Let me move on.
Well,
It's funny, we've gotten
cutting a little
criticized for
close.
being
Yeah.
too big and too
I'm just giving you my
small.
opinion.
we
and-
can
This is-
explain why, because it's probably going to come up in the conversation
This is,
later
a,
anyway.
this is an opinion show. I mean, that's good.
Oh, no,
enough.
it ties into
You know. I want to change the focus a little bit. In addition to the $100,570,369 that the town is going to give you, in addition to that, there's also grants that you get.
Correct.
And I looked at a Board of Ed document, and that's about 4.5 million in addition to what the mayor gives for all kinds of programs. There's like a dozen or more, maybe 20 grants. Okay. And then I gather that you have available some of last year's surplus that you put in a special checking account. I'm going to use that for a minute, that you can draw down on for big ticket items. Am I?
Correct.
Yeah.
The Board of Education every year provides permission to the central office as to how we can utilize the 1% account. It
That's
is not
actually what it's
for-
called, a 1% account.
It's
Yeah.
not for reoccurring expenses. So predominantly, the board has issued my authority to act on capital items like you're suggesting, but in the areas of maintenance and technology.
So I believe that year to year to year, that amount may be between like 500,000 and $1 million, just depending on the year. Is that
Well,
sound
it
like
actually, I think we had a high a few years ago that was, it could never be over 1% of the allocated budget.
Hence the name.
So
1%.
the thing is that we had high about, I want to say it was like 700,000, maybe closer to 8. And then those are all drawn down because we have identified projects from our strategic plan. So
if you end
everything
up-
comes from the strategic plan.
And if you end up with 300,000 as surplus this year, that's all that goes into that 1%
Correct. And that's
account.
the board is already assuming where it's going to
It's
go
already been
because
allocated.
it's part of our strategic
Spend.
plan.
Okay. And in addition to that, you get from time to time, I guess, gifts.
Correct. We're very fortunate. Since 2009-10, my first year here, we've now been able to get donations of nearly $800,000, $795,895, which is incredible. Last year alone, as a school district, over $245,000 was donated to Wallingford Public Schools in goods, services, and money.
Now, any big donors here?
Huge. We
Can you mention any names? Or are they-
Absolutely.
Well, let's pitch them.
Absolutely.
Let's give them some credit.
We cannot thank enough, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, Midstate Medical, Oberk Steel. We also are very strong partners with White Way Cleaners. I think those
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A has been an incredible partner in our district.
BYK.
BYK, thank you.
A lot. There's a lot.
We're very fortunate, the local partners. And then you can't forget that we have local businesses that, be it a donation for food
Sure.
for an event, to help with students, the movie theater. This summer, coming to a theater near you will be another video from Wallingford Public Schools on encouraging students to read.
So
They donated their seats from when they renovated
Yeah, they
their.
donated
I just want to
theaters.
slow you down and back up a little bit,
So-
because we've all seen those little promotions in the
Yes.
movie theater. Tell me again, who pays for those?
Nobody. The movie theater donates the
They
whole thing.
donate that?
Yes.
Wow,
And then when they renovated their theater
Yeah.
and pulled out those seats, they donated it to our it was at
Moran Middle School.
Middle School auditorium.
Very
so
cool.
there's unbelievable, and really, I have to take a second and say that's really Dr. Menzo. The fact of he's going out there and asking for these donations, and the amazing thing is, just ask. These local
They never
businesses
say no.
that nobody's ever said no. They want to donate. They want to help.
In addition to these gifts, there's also some deals, some proprietary deals, some business deals that you guys have struck in the last year, or, just briefly review what those deals are, and I just assume there's going to be millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars coming in, right?
We could only hope that that's
All
the
right.
case.
Give us the quick,
First of all, we have
quick review.
we have a partnership with Office Depot. Many people think that it doesn't exist in the country anymore, but it's actually a large company still, office supply store. They approached us about 2.5 years ago to actually go into partnership with them and IBM to develop a student software system. Dealing with mastery-based learning, and dealing with giving parents better information about where their students were in their academic careers. We kept going back and forth, so we do have that partnership with Office Depot and IBM. We're one of 4 districts in the country that is working on developing a state-of-the-art
Yeah,
software.
but I'm talking cash. I mean,
Well, I'm
partnership.
getting there,
so-
Mr.
okay.
Brzezinski. The next part of it is that in that
Mike.
process,
Tell him, Mike.
in that process, Mike,
Mike.
they learned more about our school district, and
Yeah.
we were engaging in design thinking, and we were beginning to investigate the concept of lean, and we developed a curriculum. It's called 3D Design, 3D Wallingford 3D Program, Dream Design Do, and we ended up developing a K-8 curriculum that we own the license to, we own the trademark, we own the copywriting, and we licensed it to Office Depot to leverage basically their staff to sell across the country.
So you get a cut of the action.
We get a cut of the action.
What's the cut?
Right now, the cut is 50/50. The way that the agreement states is that every 6 months, the cut goes 10% more in our favor, up to an 80/20.
Well, are they selling? I mean, are they?
They've only been on the quote-unquote shelves since early February.
Of this year?
Of
Yes,
this year.
very new.
So it's very new. I just recently, as recently as Monday afternoon, had a marketing phone call to talk about the national launch. It's been the curriculum has been correlated to the new next-gen science standards, and so now we're just looking at California standards and Florida standards and Texas standards, because those are the districts that we'd want to sell to.
So what are the realistic expectations?
I can't really
As from
of
a
revenue.
revenue source?
Yeah.
I can't really say at this point. I know that we, just with some of our partnership work with them, we have recently brought in about $24,000. So that's just recent.
It's a start.
So we're making it.
So in 5 years, I see, a huge pot of money, and we can
can only
we
hope.
can cut down the
only hope.
taxpayer.
That would be.
We also, going back to the lean, we're trying to develop
Yeah.
a lean toolkit just for schools that we could leverage our partnership with Office Depot to offer as a service.
That's where the whole lean concept came about.
Yeah.
really, was the-
LEAN, lean and
LEAN.
mean,
Yep,
right? I
lean
mean,
and
that's
mean.
lean and mean. So when you start making bucks on these proprietary deals, does it go through the appropriation process through the town council, where it's going over to the town and they appropriate it back to you? How does that work?
What was set up through Jim Bose, the comptroller,
Yeah.
is basically it's an enterprise account, just like the food services.
Okay,
an
so it does
enterprise-
go through the
Yep.
budgetary process?
Yep.
Okay. And probably in a special revenue fund, which is
Correct.
approved every
Yes,
year
exactly.
Correct.
by the Wallingford Town Council.
Absolutely.
Some quick hitters. There's some grants I noticed for special ed and English as a second language, I believe.
Correct.
And so my question is, do these grants cover the total costs of the special ed program and English?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
That's why we only have
roughly-
$300,000 left this year.
Roughly, what percentage of the cost do these grants cover?
Oh, I would have to. I would
Less than
have-
50%?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the reason why I ask that, from time to time, as I watch a budget hearing or a public hearing,
It's
something
actually
like that.
less than 20% because
gonna
the
say.
numbers we spend, I'm just going off the top of my head, about $3.5
Good
million dollars, and we only get about 500,000.
So, but here's why I ask. From time to time, we hear you or a member of the Board of Ed or someone say, yeah, but you get a grant for that. And so I just wanted to clarify that a grant doesn't equate to 100% of your cost. That's what I wanted
It
to.
depends on the programming. For like
Okay.
preschool,
I was just gonna say,
we have the
preschool's
Smart
a
Start
good
grant,
example.
which we were very fortunate as a district to receive 2 Smart Start grants.
Yeah.
So we have 4 Smart Start classrooms that are in our district that are funded by the state for the
100%?
next 100% for the next
Okay.
12 years.
Finally, on this topic, as you look into the future, do you see any volatility perhaps coming into your financial picture, or
Absolutely.
what category of costs are volatile? They could go way up or go way down.
Special ed.
Walk me through briefly how that works. Why is that volatile?
There's 2 components to it. The first one they're both somewhat out of our hands, but one is actually one that we don't mind because it's based on students. The other one is based on adult decisions. The first one is based on adult decisions, which was the governor's decision and the state's decision to cut or raise the threshold of reimbursement for districts. So this October, we received a bill that we had to assume. That's why our unencumbered fund balance is so low, $330,000 bill as of October that was unknown to us.
And I just want to back up a little bit. And you got this bill because?
Because the governor raised the threshold for reimbursement. So if a student in Wallingford, it costs, say, $15,000 to
For special ed services?
for special ed, well, no, for regular ed services.
Okay.
Anything that's 4.5 times above that, the state would pay. The thing is that the state actually reduced the threshold by 9%. So the 9% was $330,000 that we had to make up in October. The other part that's volatile is that a student's needs change. And that's the part that we don't mind because we're there to help the students. But students move into our district. As of July 1st of this year, we had over 45 special ed students enter into our district, some of which, just because of their needs, the services were quite costly.
Just give me a little more detail as to how and why they're costly, and what do those services look like, and the range. I mean, are we
Sure.
talking $1,000 or $50,000?
You're-
Put some meat on the bones
There's a
there.
significant range. So at a low range, again, a student who goes into a classroom where there's already potentially a paraeducator that could help that student. There's already a special educator, so that becomes part of that student becomes part of that special educator's caseload. So it's really just a seamless entry into the system. To students who move into district who will never enter our schools because of the difficulties they have, the severe disabilities, which might cost the district $175,000 a student.
You got to pay for.
Outplace.
You got to pay for.
Yes.
It's a placement in another
Yes.
school, a specialized
Which
school.
is
that-
appropriate because it's for that child. So I mean,
No, I'm not
They need
debating
but
that.
it is quite costly.
So, family moves in, that could be $150,000, $200,000.
And Mike, it's important
Correct.
to note
Yeah.
that if a family moves into our community, the existing evaluation and program that the other school system put in place, we need to honor it.
Yeah.
So that's a fact.
So how often does this happen?
This year it happened this fall several times. And again, that was what, right now, we're over $1 million, just over $1 million in deficit in special ed.
Yep.
It's coupled with the change in services needed for students as well as the governor's reduction.
And there's no way you can predict or budget? I mean, it just
We
dropped in your
we
lap.
try.
sort of.
I mean, our special ed director and the special ed teachers and team do everything they can to make certain that we're monitoring students, going to their PPTs, making sure that we're checking with in district as well as out of district. We have a lot of in-district programming, so over the last several years, we've brought more students back in district because it's a cost savings. The challenge is that our number of students in special ed has not risen. It's actually gone down since 2008, but our costs have gone up.
Maybe that's a topic for another show,
Sure.
because I got a lot more questions, but we don't have, it's only
No,
another
no,
show.
I apologize.
No. I mean, I'm
It's a very complicated subject.
I'm interested in this, and our viewers should be interested in this, and I think the education community should be interested in this, because well, it's money, and big-time money.
And the
So-
key thing, though, I just want to say
Yeah.
is that our teachers and our administrators, our focus is always on making sure that we're providing what's appropriate for the students. And we don't cut corners. And actually, I just received a lovely email from a parent who wants to move into our community because she's heard so much about how our special education teachers and administrators are focused on the child. And that, while it costs money, it is part of our responsibility. And it's great when kids make strides and actually show the growth they need to.
I want to change the subject radically to the food service program, the cafeteria program. We've been following that story quite closely on the show. You probably know we had union representatives and union president for the cafeteria workers on the show. I've had some opinions about it, but I want to sort of get brought up to date. I know that you put out bid specs. The bids are going to be open, I think, next week. And if you decide to outsource the food service programs, the contract's in place 2 or 3 weeks from now. I mean, the exact dates I have, but it's in that order of magnitude, I think. And so I'm interested in the rationale for doing that, for exploring outsources. I understand the cafeteria has its own special budget and stuff, and you get revenues in. That's the price kids pay for meals, and there's grants and things. I don't want to get too complicated, but you also have to pay staff and buy food, and the revenues now are not keeping up with expenses. A fair shortcut approach to the
Absolutely.
Yes,
problem.
that's fair.
And costs seem to be trending up. Labor and food seem to be trending up.
40%.
And so that gets me to the other side of the equation, revenues. And I want to talk about the revenues for a minute briefly. Are you charging the maximum legal amount now for those meals, or is there legal room? I'm not talking about parents getting angry. I'm not talking about the demand for food. Not talking about that at all. I'm talking about the legalities of it. Can you charge more if you wanted to?
Certainly, we can.
Yeah.
We've done the cost analysis, though, and when we every time we raised lunch prices, which we did this year,
Yeah.
we've raised them, unfortunately, twice during my tenure in Wallingford. They hadn't been raised for many, many
Years.
years.
Kids stop
prior to
eating, I
that.
hear. I watch your program. They
The
stop
thing
eating.
is, the
They
thing
bring
is,
peanut butter sandwiches
they
from home.
do. They unfortunately do. The rates. We didn't see as much decline this year, but
Okay.
we are now solidly. We are at the top of our, or solidly in our DIRG, our district reference group.
How much
prices.
more can you raise prices legally?
I don't know. There's a calculator that changes every year, so I don't want to.
Like a quarter, a dime in that order?
Well, it depends, because
something like
we have to look at the difference between what we're going to get for reimbursement from this federal government for free reduced lunches.
Okay.
So we didn't get the calculator at this point, so I would.
And also, doesn't it vary between elementary and high school?
Correct.
Entrees versus à la carte?
I mean,
there's
we
a
most
variety of
likely,
factors.
we most likely could go up at least a quarter. The challenge is that, again, you run the risk that your
Yeah.
percentages go down.
Yeah, there's a breaking point and a break-even. Okay. So is this decision to explore outsourcing just a matter of money, or are there other issues like quality, service, menu variety? Are there other non-monetary issues? Or is this just a matter of money?
Well, I think from the board's perspective, the monetary component is the primary factor. Obviously, if you bring in a outside vendor, that's all they do, is food service and cafeterias specifically targeting for schools. Their ability to stay current for best practices, availability for diversity in foods, presentation. They can be a little bit swankier in how they dress up cafeterias and make food look more enticing.
They have
from
a flashy
marketing-
brochure, I hear. A flashy
can be-
video, I hear.
from
I
a
may have seen
marketing-
it, actually.
From a marketing perspective, they can bring in flat screen TVs and
Yeah, right.
show all sorts of things that, frankly,
right.
we don't have that ability, but that could drive revenue, but may not. Food quality is still quality. So those are factors, but I think overarching is the financial component.
So here's the big question I have. The bid specs that you have out is a cost-plus contract. So they bill through the food, they bill through the cost of their food and other allowable charges. So how do you know, when you get these bids in, what the final cost? Well, you can't know. I mean, their profit is a bid, a fixed number, either per meal or whatever, but you can't know what the food bill is going to be. So when it comes time to evaluate whether you're better off with town employees, Board of Ed employees, or an outsourced company, and you try to pair cost, that's speculation, yeah?
Well, I don't know.
I think that I think it could, depending on how you view it. I mean, the way you described it, potentially, yes. I think that there's also, we give them the same data that we use for our planning next year. So they have the projected number of meals. They have the projected number of employees necessary. They have all those basic elements. So we're starting off with as a level of a playing field as possible. Those key components, because those are required by the state. Our bid is not a Wallingford bid, it's a state bid. We have to follow all the state bid procedures. I just would like to say, though, when it comes, because you mentioned service, there is not an issue with service.
Thank
Our
you for saying that.
employees, our cafeteria family is just that. They are an incredible group of people that do an incredible job every day. And it is not anything that they could have done differently as workers. This is not because of them.
Correct. They've actually came to us
Yes.
with all sorts of ideas and suggestions, and they've implemented so many different ideas to help improve the delivery, the quality. They are so committed. They are. And that's what makes
Absolutely.
this, frankly, that's what makes this very, very challenging.
Okay, yeah, and you said off camera they get a very good report card in your eyes, so we'll
They
be
do.
following
Absolutely. They
the,
definitely do.
following the story and the decision-making process, and I'll be seeing how you decide one is cheaper than the other. But let's move on.
Sure.
I hesitate to wade into the swamp of mastery-based learning. I mean, from an outsider to the school system, I mean, it is a baffling sort of a thing, especially someone like myself that went to the old-fashioned high school. I figured, things worked out. But now this mastery-based learning is on the scene, although the concept has been around for some decades now, but it's become very much in vogue, I think, and this is going to be a question for you guys down the line because of computers, I think, but that has no. Okay. So in talking to, friends and colleagues and folks about the show, they say, what's coming up? And I say, Dr. Menzo and Roxanne McCare coming on. What are you talking about? Mastery-based learning is one of the topics. And they say, what's that? I know you put a lot of effort and horsepower into communicating with the parents and the teachers, with presentations and things and explanations, but it's still a mystery for we outsiders. So in the next and final segment of the show, I want to try to define what mastery-based learning is. I want to get it from a lot of different angles, and you'll have your time to do that. And as we have kind of a gentleman's agreement among the three of us, that my role in this discussion is sort of to be the foil, the devil's advocate, to sort of challenge what's going on, and you guys are going to overpower me with whatever, and that's... and we're gonna-
Dazzle 'em.
Yeah, you're going to dazzle me with footwork. So I did spend some time trying to figure out mastery-based learning, and I find there's no one iteration of it. There's a lot of variety around the country as to... so I just want to start with Wikipedia. You scoffed at this, but it gives you a lock and load moment, a launch moment to say whatever you want about it. So here's what Wikipedia is: mastery-based learning. Mastery learning is an instructional strategy and educational philosophy first formally proposed by this guy. Mastery learning maintains that students must achieve a level of mastery, for example, 90% on a knowledge test, for example, in prerequisite knowledge before moving forward to learn subsequent information. If a student does not achieve mastery on the test, assessment in Wallingford speak, if they do not achieve mastery on the test, they are given additional support in learning and reviewing the information and then tested again. The cycle continues. Mastery learning methods suggest that the focus of instructions is should be the time required for different students to learn the same material and achieve mastery. Well, let's stop there. Dr. Menzo, I want to start with you. How close is Wikipedia to what you guys in Wallingford are doing?
I think it is. It's not too far.
Okay.
I think that the thing that when we look at it, because we are a member of the New England Secondary School Consortium, the NESSC, part of the League of Innovative Schools, which is made up of schools in Maine, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Connecticut. And the philosophy that we're working under is that that's just one element. There are several components to it, it's not just about the fact of a student not moving on if he or she does not master certain concepts or skills. It's providing them with flexible pathways to learning, so developing some college and career readiness. It's also developing with the concept of providing those additional supports, but looking at, as it did say in there, time is the variable and the learning is the constant. And really in our system right now, time has been the constant and learning has been the variable. So one of the metaphors that we use, or I use, because personally I'm really hungry right now, so this will make it difficult, is that it's the Swiss cheese model of education. That's what we have right now. We have, every student starts off with a nice thick piece of provolone, and there's no holes in it. Student goes from kindergarten to first grade, they get a C, say, or a 2 or a 3 on their report cards, because we do have standards-based report cards. That is not mastery, so we could punch a hole if it's out of 4. We punched a hole in that system. Now they go to middle school, they end up with straight Bs, that's 80%. We keep punching holes. By the time they get to high school, there's almost no piece of cheese left. And so the thing is that what mastery-based learning is trying to express is that we need to make sure that we have clear indication of what we want students to know and be able to do, and that we want to make sure that students aren't artificially moved forward without demonstrating those skills and knowledge. One of the key pieces that I think of in another metaphor that we use is that if you're going to fly a plane with a pilot, and our present system, if a pilot gets an A for takeoff, a B for in-flight, and then an F for landing, they actually still do pass in our system, but would you want to fly with that pilot? Probably not if they're not going to be able to fly and land that plane successfully.
So, after having gone through school in a non-mastery based system, I feel so inadequate now. I feel scarred for life. I mean,
It's okay. We have support groups.
yeah. I mean, I think
But you also have to understand
the way you just described it, I'm full of Swiss cheese holes.
Well, but I think that the thing is that
Right?
our system has changed and so have
Yeah.
our students.
Right.
And I think that's the thing. And
Our society has changed.
Our society
and
has
how we learn
changed.
has changed, and what's important to learn has changed.
And it's kind of, it would be unfortunate for us to believe that our system of education shouldn't change. The system of education started, the way it's set up right now, is in 1892. The exact system was in 1892. I don't think our students, our society reflects 1892.
Well, change is not the same as improvement.
True.
And change can be a redefinition of basically the same thing. And change can occur and give fancy new labels, and new PhDs can come out in support of it and do their biased or unbiased research.
Sure.
But the proof of the pudding is the data that suggests the way Wallingford is going will give a provable, demonstrable, data-driven outcome better than Mike Brudzinski's life at Brookline High School and my Swiss cheese pocked experience. And I feel off Swiss cheese
Well,
up
I
here.
think that,
So how would you address that?
Well, I think the difference is that the change that we're referring to is maybe not going back as far as your experience in
pardon?
high school.
I resemble
But
that
the
remark.
fact is, when you look at the most recent data, the last 10, 15 years of data of students when they go on to college, we know the statistics. 40% of students have to take remedial English or math in
No, but the
college.
statistics
So-
I'm looking for.
So wait, no, but let me finish this. So the fact is, something's wrong with our system. They've gone to college with Swiss cheese. If they have to take high school math as a freshman in college, waste their money or their parents' money, or for that matter, government money, because they have to remediate it, something didn't go right. So and this is where I have a challenge with our graduation rates. We celebrate our graduation rates, but they shouldn't be the be-all and end-all of an organization, because I think some of them could go up artificially. So I'd rather have a student stay in our school system and learn and be there for 5 years and come out with a solid education than just say, oh, well, we're going to make them do extra credit. We're going to have them, do that quick 11th hour or 12th hour. We're going to have them, before they cross the stage, hand in 50 points of extra credit to get them to pass. That is not helping us.
So,
It's not helping the student either.
Exactly.
So my rebuttal is this is almost a false choice, and that you're presenting, and some of the problems you described as a management problem, not a system of education problem. I mean, the system of education that I experienced put a man on the moon, it got us a landing on
Absolutely,
Mars,
absolutely.
conquered polio. I mean, just did a lot of things. So you can point to things that are wrong with the system, but I also could point to a lot of things that is right with the system. And in those school systems where there is social promotion, without
Absolutely.
rigorous, now that's a management problem.
Well, I
That
think
doesn't mean you have to revamp and redefine
I
and
think, though,
restandardize.
I think you're underestimating the
Let me just finish
societal
my
challenge,
thought.
though.
That superintendent's not, telling the principals or not telling the teachers, no social promotions in the whole community, telling parents, if your child doesn't learn it, they're getting an F.
But remember, you could have a child go through with straight C's
Right.
without social promotion and still need to take remedial math because those C's don't accurately reflect what he or she knows.
And think
so
about
I
this,
think
Mike,
that's-
when probably you and I generationally are pretty much aligned, I'm guessing.
You're young enough to be my daughter.
I don't think so. But that's not the point. There was no such thing in the
Trying to
70s.
distract you.
In the 70s, the idea of if you were going to college, there was I don't know anybody that did remedial math and English. The expectations of colleges and universities, and maybe it's a reflection of more kids go, but the expectations of colleges and universities are, I think, higher and greater than the expectations, perhaps, that were expected in the 60s and 70s. And we also know about student engagement. The whole notion of mastery-based learning is really an opportunity for student to have voice and to be actively involved. One of the first things we learned through our innovation team, 4 years ago, was we know that as students progress in their education from elementary, middle to high school, their potential for engagement decreases. So we need to make sure that our kids remain as fully engaged and participating, and not a one-way street in how they're being force-fed information, but they're actually asking questions of their teachers and of their educational arena, saying, why am I doing this? How am I doing this? And really taking an active role in how they're learning
So
and
when
why they're learning.
so when I think back, my rebuttal is,
Sure.
so when I think back to my experience, there was engagement because good teachers not demanded, but good teachers stimulated engagement. And the kids knew who those good teachers were. And we knew what classes were interesting, and we knew what classes were boring.
Mike,
So-
fundamentally, you know what's the biggest
Yeah.
difference?
Right.
Is there are literally a million more distractions for a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old or an 8-year-old in our society today than there were in the 60s and 70s. You lived in the moment. In the 60s and 70s, when you were in a room talking to somebody like we're talking right now, there were no phones going off. There were no buzzing going on. There was no texting. There is no Twittering.
And there shouldn't be today under the old system. You don't need mastery-based learning to get rid of cell phones in the
fact of the matter
classroom.
is our society
Yeah.
moves at a totally different pace than it did in the 60s and 70s, that our kids are taking in information and processing information and are part of a society that reacts and acts in a moment to something that is fed to them.
Yeah, and first, and I think, and you know this, I mean, we have exceptional educators in Wallingford. We have teachers who
Agreed.
are stimulating their students, are engaging their students. We have administrators who are supporting their staff in doing that.
Totally
So
agreed.
first and foremost, we definitely have that going on.
Get that
I think the thing
out
is, though, that another part of this, it's not even about the whole process of kids, and I understand there are elements. I agree. I have this debate with my father. The thing is that I think there's clarity that also comes in the system. And it's not about mastery based, it's just about standards. And having a teacher better understand what he or she needs to expect of his students is going to in turn then require the student to better understand what the teacher expects of him or her, and then the parent to understand.
So
right
try this
now,
on for size.
just if I could
Yeah,
just say
go
one more
ahead.
thing.
Yeah.
In high school, I'm sure you had an English class and you knew the easy English teacher versus maybe the not so easy English teacher. Why was there an easy English teacher and why was there a more difficult English teacher? Because there wasn't consistent standards and there wasn't consistent expectations. And that's what this system allows us to pull back, because we can't have students who are put in that situation. And our teachers work so hard to be consistent, but sometimes they need additional help in that process because of the changing population
So-
of
That's a good
students.
point, too,
So-
about changing populations.
Give me a minute here. So you raise
Sure.
a couple of points. On the one hand, you seem to be arguing or advocating that everyone is going to undergo education until everyone gets an A minus. So well, so there's no Swiss cheese pockmarks. So everyone's going to be getting an A minus, and therefore they have mastered. And depending on how you define master, but mastery could be defined in any number of ways, from rigorous to not quite as rigorous to sort of mediocre to not rigorous at all. And you could define it. Well, that's mastery. That's good enough for me. Let me just go on. On the issue of standards, I'm going to go back to the classic standard: teacher to student, teacher to parents. Here's the standard. You got to know the material we teach. You got to know it. That's the standard. And at the end of the teaching unit, that can be modified and evolve, there'll be a test, not an assessment. We're not coddling you. We're giving you extra help. There could be extra homework. There could be tutoring. There could be intervention. But you got to learn the stuff we teach. And at the end, there's a test, and it's a written test, because to be literate in society, for the Wallingford school system to throw someone out on the street with a diploma on an unsuspecting public, they have to be able to read and write. So it's a written test, and it's not an alternative sort of a way of doing it. You don't get a verbal exam, although I could see that being worked in, but in the end, they have to graduate knowing how to read and write and put their own thoughts in writing, report data in writing. So that's the clearest standard. And when I see the State Department of Education, and I will have time to pull out some of the stuff they wrote and mock them appropriately, what I see is they're taking something as simple as what I just said. You got to learn the material we teach. That's the standard. And there will be a test, and you better demonstrate your learning on the test. That's it. So clear. Well, now that's being broken up into educational, gobbledygook and vagaries and generalizations, and that one standard is broken into like 50 paragraphs. Your rebuttal to my rebuttal. That's called a surrebuttal.
I agree with everything you just said.
But?
Because there's no but.
Yeah.
That is exactly what we're suggesting. Except I think the only thing that we need to do for students is to clarify to the extent, a depth of what they need to understand. So while you said just what you described,
Yeah.
and I know you didn't mean this, was more of a factual point where just regurgitation of knowledge.
No.
And that's why I just wanted, I knew you didn't mean that. So where the challenge is, and I think this is what the exciting part is that we're getting deeper learning on the part of students, because we're digging deeper. See, in the master-based system, there's the standard. Underneath that, there's a more discrete piece of information called an indicator. Then you have your scoring criteria. The scoring criteria is based on Bloom's taxonomy, so it has the level of rigor built right into it. So the thing is that what we're trying to do is we're doing the exact same thing, and maybe it's not, maybe change is too harsh of a word. It's really kind of taking stock of our house again as an educational system, not just in Wallingford but nationally, and increasing the rigor, because we took out of our practice this year homework that was just handed in that we all know we did. I know even in Catholic schools, you handed in the paper, you knew nobody ever graded it, but you got the check off in the book, and homework counted for 20% of the grade. So I knew I was golden with 20%. I didn't have to earn a full 100% in that class. We removed that compliance piece, so now students, the grade they get has to be based on the work that they actually submit that's evaluated by their teacher, not if they bring in a canned food item. I had to do that in Catholic school. I'll be honest.
I think the
sorry,
important-
Sister Gertrude.
I think the important point you make is, are you a compliant student? So I'm guessing you were a compliant student. I certainly was a compliant student.
I had a little puppy in me. I
Well,
beg your pardon.
okay.
I did, still do, by the way.
But what about, that compliancy doesn't necessarily equate into a depth of understanding, knowledge.
And our teachers want that depth. Our teachers are striving for
Well,
that.
again, I think this is a false
I think our
choice. It
students do, too.
Yeah. No, true.
Yeah.
Just my opinion. I think this is a false choice. When you go through the basic grades, I would offer that the first job is to get facts and knowledge, and then in the later grades, maybe you have the luxury to offer opinions and analyze.
Yeah, that
So
doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't work anymore.
No, because the fact is, the world that the children are going into and the jobs that they're going into, talk to the businesses. I do it every other month with our business think tank. Needs just that, thinkers.
So
They
I'm
don't
gonna-
need-
Out-of-the-box
They need
thinkers,
thinkers.
rather than the
They don't need
compliant.
the compliant.
Yeah.
See, that's the false choice. So folks that graduated in a non-mastery based, you would call environment.
That has nothing to do with mastery-based learning. What you're describing,
Yeah.
and unfortunately what you're using is you're creating mastery-based learning, you're turning it into something it's not.
I'm trying to find the distinction between
So,
what
but the-
most of us experienced
So
before
the fact
mastery-based
is,
learning and mastery-based learning.
The fact
What's
is,
the
as I
difference?
said, there's components to the system.
Yeah.
So the fact is that what you're describing is the fact that mastery-based learning is really the only part about it is dealing with making sure students understand material before they move forward. The concept of the deeper thinking and everything, that's always been our
It's always
focus,
been there.
higher order thinking.
It's always been
So
there.
that's not new.
Yeah.
And so really, and the way that teachers teach and the way that students will learn math and science and social studies, they're going to continue to do it the same way they have. We're going to continue to challenge, though, our students, and our teachers do this all the time, is to force them to take their studies into a deeper level. More in investigation, more application. Look at the capstone projects. Look at our student who, taking on the state food
I have
share.
another example for you.
That was amazing.
I have another example, and I got to keep my eye on the clock. I'm going to give you an example. You have Citizen Mike and his twin,
Okay.
and he's going through the Wallingford school system, let's say Mark Tishian High School, and we take 11th grade American history that is in the curriculum. Mike goes to the, I'm going to call it old school classroom, and my twin goes to the mastery-based American history classroom. Are we getting equal educations, or is mastery-based my twin going to be better off and more knowledgeable than poor me who went through traditional?
As long as the person in the traditional, and
Yeah.
when you're saying traditional, I'm assuming
Non-mastery based.
Well,
Yeah.
no. See, that's the challenge is that mastery. The key thing is about the instructional practices, and our teachers at our schools have high-level instructional practices. So the thing is that the difference that you'd see there, if you're saying traditional, is that
No,
the
it's
student.
Wallingford school system
No,
before mastery
so
based and
what I'm-
after mastery
Exactly.
based.
So what I'm saying is, okay, before and after. I thought you were meaning
Yeah.
concurrently. The thing is that the before is that
That's
yes,
the
they would
class
ha-
I'm going to.
The before would be just traditional grades. You'd have to figure out, and the teachers are doing this now because they're moving in this trajectory, is to explain what are the elements of the grades so the parent and the student can understand where the student's needs of growth are. That's the traditional class. It's just going to be a traditional A, B, C. There's going to be the homework in there. There's going to be that information. Teachers reflect. The mastery base, and it's hard to even talk about the past because we've moved so much in this direction and our teachers are doing such a great job, is that it's going to be more personal. It's going to be where the student is going to know about his or her areas of strength, areas of growth, and they're going to actually be able to talk about those. They're going to actually be able to work towards achieving those.
Who's going to know more American history?
They should know the same.
Okay.
So, I think that if you're looking at outcomes, the outcome that we're looking at is making certain that students leave with a diploma that has a high level of currency.
That's the
We
ticket
want to
right
make
there.
sure that diploma, and I'm not saying that any person who's graduated before Wallingford Public School, that their diploma doesn't have the same level.
And I'm
but we
not
want
going to get
increase
that
it.
in the non-mastery based American history, 11th grade American history?
Well,
I'm going to be Swiss cheese?
No, it depends on you as a student. And it depends on where you are as a student, and depends on a lot of factors that didn't come into play when even I was in school.
Well, if it depends on me as a student, if I'm a slacker and I don't study hard, I'm going to get a C+, and that's what I deserve. And if I work hard and I study and do everything I need to do, and a teacher inspires me, maybe I get that A-.
And you'll still
but
get
after a year of American history, time's up. We have to go from the Revolutionary period to the pre-Civil War period to the Civil War. We have to move on through these teaching units. And if I don't do well, if I get a C-, let's say, in the American Revolutionary War, that means I don't get to study the Civil War because I'm still
The thing is,
Stuck.
again, the standards
Yeah.
are based on skills and knowledge. So the fact is that in that particular instance with
Yep.
history, you're going to be looking at more of a process skills. You're going to be looking at more writing skills. You're going to be those skills that you said, taking out the pen and write. Those are the skills that you're going to be looking at, as well as the content. But the key is that we want literate citizens, and I think that that's what we're trying to raise the bar and continue to move in that direction. We're not alone in this, as you know. You've done your research. There's over 40 countries and 40 states in the country that are moving in this direction much more aggressively than Connecticut. Connecticut is probably the slowest at this point. Well, I shouldn't say the slowest, but is moving more methodically. There is no governmental push in the sense that we have to do this.
Right.
New Hampshire, Maine have mandated it. Other states, California, Colorado, have been doing it for years. So, again, if the worst thing, and I'll just say this, if I can say one thing, is if the worst thing that comes out of this, and I've always said this, is that our teachers, our students, and our parents know more about their child through this process because we have a deeper understanding of what we want students to know and be able to do. If that's the worst thing that comes out of it, then I would say that that's a win. We don't need to go from an A, B, C, D, F schedule to a 1 through 4. That doesn't even need to happen. We don't need to make that. Those are icing on the cake. But the fact is, we just want to make sure that students, because the number one thing is teachers are working really, really hard. Sometimes students aren't working as hard as they are. And sometimes
That's
our
the
teachers work
accountability
harder.
piece.
That's right, and that's why they get a C minus.
Wow.
Well, and that's
we
why
don't
they wouldn't
coddle
make
them,
and that's
and-
why they wouldn't make mastery.
And that's right.
And that's
so
why they
get it-
wouldn't graduate. And the thing that you hit the nail on the head, and I
Yeah.
couldn't agree with you more,
Uh-oh.
is that we have a social. No, it's a good thing. I hope.
Yeah.
Is that we also have to get rid of this stigma that if a child doesn't graduate in 4 years, that's a bad thing. That's not damning to the child. That's not damning to the family, and that's certainly not damning to the school system. The teachers did
Well,
what they needed to do.
that could be a policy under mastery or non-mastery system.
True.
I just want to.
But there's pressures, and I think
Yeah.
this moves it away.
That's right.
I'm not going to be dissuaded from mocking the State Board of Education because
Well, how much?
if I think the first policy, or one of the first policies of the Wallingford School District should be to prohibit the students from reading anything on the State Board website. Just prohibit them. And if they confess under torture, yeah, I went to the State Board website and I read the stuff, you should flunk them. So let me give you an example. This is from their question and answer on mastery-based learning on the State Board website. Get your arms around this if you can. On mastery-based, locally developed graduation competencies are standards created by individual districts through research-based curricular concepts that focus instruction on the most foundational, enduring, and leverage concepts and skills within district-determined competencies. 32 words. Come on. Seriously? What they're trying to say is you got to know the material. I mean, you could stretch it out. I'm not done.
I'm not going to say a
What's
word.
not an indictment on us?
It's crazy, this stuff.
not
So
gonna say
there's like a half a page on how is mastery-based learning assessed. And they don't answer the question. A half a page of gobbledygook, and they just don't answer the question. And then they describe how is mastery-based learning different, and it's like 4.5 lines. And I read that, and I read it to just a reality check for myself. I read it to some others, and I said, I'm not going to tell you if this is mastery-based or non-mastery-based, but the description applies to which. You can't tell. It applies to both, or more so to the Brookline High School than it does to mastery-based. Let me give you an example. Mastery-based learning presents objectives as a series of building blocks, first lead sentence. Was in the old system too. You called them chapters sometimes. Maybe there are 3 chapters on the American. Those are building blocks. That's not new. Students move through the course material focusing on one block at a time. Did that under the old system. State Board says, well, this is mastery, but I know you're biting your tongue and you'll get the last word, and I promise you. Instead of getting a grade that averages a student's performance across a range of topics without necessarily ensuring mastery, under a MBL environment, the student is evaluated on his or her ability to demonstrate competencies or individual skills or knowledge. That's a management problem. I mean, you had, when I went to school, I think most kids went to school, you had tests or some assessment or something in periodic stages through the course curricula. And that measured knowledge and whatever the teacher wanted to get across. So absolutely no change that I saw, but you had a thought and I wanted to make sure you got it.
Could you read the first one again? I'm sorry.
MBL presents learning objectives as a series of building blocks.
I don't believe, and I didn't write that, so I don't know, but the
I didn't
in my
accuse you of
mind,
it.
in my mind, what the way I would describe that, or I would relate that to master-based learning, when they say objectives, would not be that unit of study. It would be actually what's the expectations in that unit, of that unit.
The
And I think that-
expectations are you got to learn the material.
well, that's not that easy because there's deeper levels. So just because, and I think when you think about social studies, yes, it's content driven.
Yep.
But when you think about other units of study, if you're thinking about algebra or geometry or physics or chemistry, there's discrete pieces of knowledge as well as process skills. And I think that that's the piece that we're trying to dig a little deeper on. So, but I do appreciate that. That was an interesting.
I can't say I've
Exercise.
never read it.
So thank you for sharing that.
It is wild. I mean, if you want to
You
teach,
achieved mastery.
if you want to teach a student how to write, write clearly, write simply, look out for adverbs and adjectives and gobbledygook and jargon, clear writing that's intended to communicate and not show how smart you are, that's not the State Board of Ed. I mean, what a terrible example. I just wanted to rant about that. So I'm going to give you my closing argument, and it's going to be weak and inadequate. And then I'm going to go to you guys and you got about a minute, and then we're going to run out of time, minute each, if you so choose. And this discussion hopefully is not over, and maybe we can supplement this with another show. But when I first got in, my closing is this: when I sort of got into the topic of mastery base and preparing for this show, I said, mastery base, boy, that sounds neat. Mastery is sort of a slick word, as if any other system of education is non-mastery. Yet when I went to school, and John Glenn went to school, the astronaut, he had and did master a lot of stuff. The old system encouraged people to master, encouraged students to master, and master they did. They weren't, they were expected to absorb the content and learn the content. They knew what was expected, goes no further than that. Parents were told your child is expected to learn what we teach and to answer the test questions, and the grading system, that can be from school district to school district. But to the extent there's variations, it's a management issue, not a mastery, non-mastery issue. So the old system worked pretty well. And what I've heard is, well, the world has changed, and now we have to have alternatives and assessments, and so far it's not persuasive that the change is for the better, and I'm done.
Good.
No, what I was just going to say, I think your interesting take on the management is something that, I do think there's something to that. I think that there are, and what we've been trying to say in Wallingford, but I think unfortunately sometimes people go to the farthest degree, is that this is not a huge change. And we've been saying that in our process. It's just clarifying what we're doing. And we're trying to make it more crystal clear to students, parents, and the teachers. The teachers want to make it clear to students and parents. The teachers know already what they need to teach, but
Yep.
make it clearer for them. That's really what this is about. I think we can get caught up in all this stuff and all the other elements, but it's really about making it clearer so that expectations are clear. Because like you said, in the past, your parents would just know what you were going to learn, but did your mom and dad really know exactly what you were going to learn? They knew that you were going to study history, you were going to study dates, they knew you were going to study science, you might learn about Newton and all the different theories, but they didn't know necessarily discrete skills, and that's the thing that we want, is really to get to that point.
Roxanne, you get a chance to mop up, and I'm done. I've spoken my piece. So
I absolutely agree with Dr. Menzo. I mean, it's an opportunity really for us to send clarity across families, educators, and the community, what the expectations are for our students to be successful.
let's make that the final word. Thanks for coming on the show. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. It's something I'm very much interested in.
Good to
so
see you
I'm
again.
glad
We haven't
we-
seen you in a
glad
while.
We wanted to
I
have this
appreciate
little joust. Thanks for watching the Citizen Mike Show. We appreciate it. We're here in the studio on Wednesdays. You got to watch the Citizen Mike Show on Thursdays at 9, Fridays at 9. After that, it is on the internet. You can go to WPA.tv, scroll down, and there's a button, Local Producer Shows, and that gets you to YouTube. Or Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday at 9. Hey, if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. Thanks for coming on again.
Thanks
Thank
for
you very
having us.
much. Appreciate it.